welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops.
And Omari Sankofa II, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be. Make sure you're reading all of the Detroit Bad Boys work, listening to Locked On Pistons, all of the great Pistons content creators out there. But of course, we would really appreciate you subscribe to the Detroit Free Press, reading all of O2's work. And for free, you can subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack, where I have game notes and analysis after every game that the Pistons play. O2, we got some things to talk about here. I think a week ago, I was just ready for the playoffs to get here. I am still kind of feeling that way. But since we last recorded, the face of the franchise, Cade Cunningham, got hurt. So first, I know everybody knows that Cade got hurt and had the collapsed lung. What I would like for you to lay out for people is what that injury means. You talked to somebody that gave you some insight and wrote an article about that, where things stood when the injury happens, any sort of updates or anything like that. And O2, I want to stay with the injury for right now. We'll get to the MBPA and the awards and all of that stuff later, but let's just stick with Cade Cunningham and the injury and the timetable and where things are at. So lay that out for everybody real quick.
Yeah, so obviously Cade suffered the collapsed lung, exited the first quarter of their game against the Wizards a week ago, and has missed their last 3 games since. It's an injury that could take anywhere from, just talking to the doctor at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Panagas Galiatsatos. I hope I said that correctly, but Dr. Panagas Galiatsatos said that, typically it's a 3-month thing for regular people like me and you, because they want to monitor you and make sure everything's good. But when you're a pro athlete and you have around the clock monitoring.
Quick, I am very disrespected by that, but continue.
We don't have, the resources that Cade Cunningham has and the monitoring that he has. So that's why athletes typically could come back a lot quicker, often within a month or so. Essentially it's just a hole in the lung, and as you're breathing and air escapes, it collapses the lung just because of the displacement, of that space in between the chest cavity and the actual lung itself. So that's why it's called a collapsed lung, just because the air pushes down on it. He kind of compared it to if you have a cut on your arm, you don't undergo surgery for it. Typically, you just put a Band-Aid on it and let it heal, and that's what the process is, just allowing it to kind of heal on its own. There is sometimes, if it doesn't heal on its own, they'll do what's called, it's called talc, and they put it in your lungs, and it just keeps the lungs connected to the chest cavity, and gives it a chance to, expand and heal. I'm not a doctor, so I don't have like a super technical explanation of it, but more or less that's what it is. It's just a waiting process, just allowing it to heal. They're not going to rush Cade back. There's 11 games left. His reevaluation is in a week, but it would be surprising to see him miss more time than that. The hope, obviously, is that he's back in time for the playoffs, which begin April 18th. So that's roughly 3 weeks from today. So a bit of a compressed timeline. In a week or so, the team will have a reevaluation update. And at that point, we'll have a better idea of if we're looking at this being by the end of the season or potentially longer.
So Cheryl says, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Cheryl for always being here with us. Order of the Blazing Horse, another Pistons podcast that you guys should be listening to, says, what up, Doe? What up, B&O? Maybe O and B next time there, Harry. And what up, Daniss? We will talk Daniss Jenkins here in just a little bit. I think my thought is, I want your opinion now, O2. I want you to take off Pistons beat writer, reporter, which you do as good as anybody in the NBA beat world. I want you to take that off and just from a perspective of what this looks like for Cade moving forward and all of that. Because for me, I do have some reservations. Listen, they got to get him healthy, right? Like, this is what it is. But I do have some reservations about his first game back being game one of the playoffs. You know what I mean? Or game two or game three, whatever. There is a part of me that is like, man, I feel like it would be really good, regardless of who they're playing. And even if it's 15 to 20 minutes, if he could get a couple games in before that. I realize then there's a whole week off and all of that, but that's just my opinion. And Wes actually brought this up to me. We were texting about it when it happened. We have seen Cade come back from injuries sometimes slow in these situations throughout his career. Now, this is vastly different. It's at the end of the year, all of that. But what is just your opinion, or where are you at in terms of just Cade's hurt, what that means for him and this team down the stretch and then into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, I don't know if there's a better way to put that. There's never a good time for it to happen, but for him to fall just short of that 65 game rule, and the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association, actually released a statement today, basically saying, "Hey, this isn't fair. This is the guy that's done everything necessary to, be first team or just all NBA in some capacity, and he may be robbed of that just because of this rule that." I think a lot of people feel is arbitrary. The rule exists to, I guess in theory, eliminate, unnecessary load management. But for Cade, if he doesn't come back next week or the week after, he's just not going to have enough games to get to that point. So, it just feels, especially for the Pistons to already have playoff position clinched, right? Like he's done essentially everything necessary to get this team to where it needs to be. And it's just really unfortunate timing. Stuff for the Pistons to not have him down the stretch as they continue to push and sort of put a nice bow on what's been their best season in 18 years. And like you said, we've seen Cade in the past this time, and then it takes him a game or a few games to kind of get back to where he was prior to the injury, which also is not great when you have the playoffs around the corner. So it's just all around unfortunate. And just for the team, for Cade personally, obviously the hope is just that you heal from this as quickly as possible, and you don't want to rush it, but also it would just be tough for him to lose more time beyond just the last 11 games or so of this season. So just sucks. It's just really unfortunate for everybody involved.
Yeah, and selfishly, I'm really hoping he's at least back for game one, since I will be out there and in attendance for that one, hoping to see him play. Jack says, hey, y'all, can finally catch a live pod. Pistons Daily is a good one to listen to also. And our guy Matthew in Brazil, hey, my fellows, what's up, Matthew? Hope you are doing well. Let's dive into the 65 game thing, because obviously it's a huge topic of conversation right now. We have some comments about it. We'll talk about those. Just where are you at? You mentioned the NBPA. I don't know if you can read the official quote. I don't know that I saw the official quote. I think they're just calling for, I don't know. I will let you read it because I don't want to say something that's wrong. So what is that quote? What did you kind of write about without spoiling that? And then where are your views on it? And we'll continue to dig into it deeper.
Yeah, no, I mean the quote more or less. Let me get the exact quote here shortly. Just so we're on the same page. One sec. Yeah, Cade Cunningham's potential ineligibility for postseason awards after a career-defining season is a clear indictment of the 65 game rule, and yet another example of why it must be abolished or reformed to create an exception for significant injuries. Since its implementation, far too many deserving players have been unfairly disqualified from end of season honors by this arbitrary and overly rigid quota. So essentially what we kind of just touched on, right? That you have players who are deserving that are, essentially being hurt by this rule that, fixes a problem that doesn't exist. And in this case, Cade has a real lung injury. This isn't a case of the team just having load management. Personally, I've never really been a fan of the rule just because I feel like the load management issue is overblown anyway, because a lot of it is just that most players just do not have bodies that can take the rigors of an 82 game season. Like there's a reason why the Ironman, the unofficial Ironman award, you typically have out of 400 something players, you have like 6 guys every season who play 82. It's just a really tough thing to do. And then the latest CBA, that's one of a few rules that really only exist to cost players money. From a player standpoint, there's really no benefit for you to have a rule in place that would just cost you money or accolades or whatever else it may be. So, but even with all of that said, we're a few years into this rule. This feels like the first real situation that kind of hits to the heart of why a lot of people feel like this is a flawed rule, right? I think both seasons, guys who are in that all NBA category are playing 65 at least anyway, so it kind of resolves itself. But this is a rare situation of a guy who only got 60 games of qualification, but I think most people would agree should be at least second team, if not first, based on the Pistons far and away being the best team in the conference. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it, Bryce, but it feels like this is like sort of a flashpoint moment of something clearly is not right with this rule if a guy like Cade is not going to qualify at the end of the year.
So I think there's layers to the conversation. I do want to point out, first and foremost, this rule, as you mentioned, was not put in place specifically for what's happening now, right? The rule was put in place with the idea of curbing load management and encouraging star players to play games. And that's where I do struggle a little bit when people just hammer it like it's the dumbest idea ever and whatever. It's like the NBA was at least, listen, it could be wrong. Like this rule may be bad and wrong and have unintended consequences, which I think it's obvious that it has. I do at least want to appreciate that the NBA was trying to give fans what they want, which is, what do fans want, Omari? They want to see the best players play, right? So I at least want to give that context. Now, this is my thing with the tanking conversation also, is everybody wants to come up with these solutions, and all of these solutions are going to have other unintended consequences as well, just like this one. So ultimately, I'm with people where like, no, don't put this in there. Just get rid of it. And we'll talk about the voter aspect of it in just a second. But I think that's where I land, is I don't think the NBA intended this to happen to somebody like Cade Cunningham and what has happened to him. But it is an unintended consequence of something else they put. I think they put it in with good intentions, and then they didn't see the outside effects of it. And now we're seeing it and it's coming to a head. Do you think that that's fair? Like, to me, that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, right. It was done with good intentions. And I understand the issue of you're a fan, you're paying your hard-earned money to see, LeBron James or Steph Curry or whoever. And it's like, oh, well, they're sitting because we have to keep them healthy for down the road when we're likely in the playoffs. Like, I think that's a deal that just is not great if you're a fan. Like, I totally understand the issue there, but also I think the reality is that whether a guy gets hurt or if he's being load managed, it kind of is the same result either way, right? You bought this ticket and you're not going to see the guy that you paid to go see. I think that's just a deterrent part of sports. You brought up the tanking issue, and not to get too far off topic, but I also feel like anything you do to, we actually saw this with tanking actually with the new lottery odds that flattened the odds a bit at the top, made it easier for teams lower in the standings to jump up, right? Like, it used to be that you couldn't fall lower than 3 or 4 if you were the top seed. Now you could fall, as low as 5. And if you're second overall, you could fall as low as 7. Now teams are angry because it's like, well, if you're a bad team and you're tanking for Wemby and, you fall however many spots, like, that's not great for you going forward. So that's another to the side effect, right?
I want to add to that real quick, and then I'll let you go. My point is the current lottery odds are why this year is so bad, because it actually encourages more teams to tank. I think some teams would be like, man, we're not catching the Pacers. We're not catching the Wizards. We're not catching the Nets. We might as well go ahead and win games and take our 10th spot or whatever. But because they've seen how the lottery is played out, that's why we have 10 teams tanking. Now, another part of that is this is a really good draft class, and that's another aspect. But to your point, I just think these things always have unintended consequences. And my only point was, I don't think that the 65-game rule was implemented to like hurt a Cade Cunningham situation. The NBA did not want this. I don't think the NBA wanted this, but maybe they should have foreseen it. Like, they get paid a lot of money to implement these rules and all of that. Maybe they should have seen this.
Yeah, and I think you probably could have seen this because, again, you have a league where, guys are going to get hurt, and every case is different, right? And the issue with load management is that it's not because they're load managing, it's because they're not on the court. That's always going to happen. Just like with tanking, it's not because the team is tanking. Fans don't like that their team is losing. And you're always going to have teams that are losing.
Well, I think what it is more than that, O2, is they want to see good games, right? To me, it's all the same argument. It's not about the actual idea of tanking for most people, in my opinion. It's about, let's pull up the schedule for tonight, O2. Actually, I think there's only 4 games tonight. Here's the issue with it. You have the Kings and the Hornets. Why are we watching that game, right? You have, so here, actually, tonight actually ends up okay. The Knicks and the Pelicans, because the Pelicans are trying to win, the Magic and the Cavs and the Nuggets and the Suns. So you actually have 3 good games tonight. But what the NBA wants to avoid is, tomorrow night, Lakers, Pacers. Pacers don't want to win. Bulls, Sixers. Bulls don't want to win. Spurs, Grizzlies. Spurs don't want to win. Wizards, Utah. Neither team wants to win, right? Nuggets, Mavericks. Mavericks don't want to win. Warriors, Nets. Nets don't want to win. Blazers, Bucks. Bucks don't want to win. I mean, that's like 12 games tomorrow, and 7 or 8 of them, the team, it's about putting out a bad product is what they're worried about, right?
For sure. And the thing is, like, you're just like the hierarchy of sports is that you're always going to have good and bad teams, right? So whether you have a lottery system in place or not, you are still going to have teams that have no incentive to win at the end of the season because they're out of the playoff hunt. And that is always going to be the case. So long story short, Kate, like, this is just the first example of the 65 game rule failing a player. It's Cade Cunningham now. Next year it could be somebody else. Like, who knows, right? Like, you may have a season where, I'm just using this player as an example because we've already seen him miss some games, but Victor Wembanyama, already a transformational defender, realistically probably a top 3 or 4 MVP candidate every year that he is in his prime. There could be a year where, he falls short, maybe 2 games. Like, he may have 63 games and fall short of this, even though he was the most dominant player, right? Like, this is something that could continue to happen. And I think it's just going to continue to look worse and worse as, time goes on, because the reality is that 65 is 80% of the season, but it's still an arbitrary cutoff. There's nothing inherently magical about 65 that makes it this rule that should be adhered to, in my opinion.
No, that's fair. I mean, and the other thing I will say is I think there's probably some other consequences out there that we don't know of or can't prove, where players have come back and played through injuries maybe they quite frankly shouldn't have been, so that they could get to their 65 games, right? Think about if this was last year for Cade Cunningham, O2. You talked about the money aspect. That would be massive for him in terms of where he would be. And you're telling me that the amount of money he made by making All-NBA last year wouldn't factor into him trying to get on the court to get those final 4 games played? And so, like, that's where it can have those other consequences as well. YouTube user just says the NBA needs to stop trying to fix problems that don't actually exist. We would be better off without load management or anti-tanking rules. I don't disagree. I want to get to a couple other aspects of it. I think we can get into this stuff. I think people are into it right now. Thomas, appreciate you always join. Says, let's amend the rule this year. Don't wait. Your thoughts on that? Because I think that's interesting. And here's my only caveat, O2. You can't only amend it for Cade. If you're going to amend the rule, then you have to amend it for everybody. And people may ask, well, like, who does that apply to? I actually think it applies to Jokic. I think Jokic is playing not 100% right now to get to 65 games. Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Edwards, just to name a few guys that are kind of on that brink right now. Of Devin Booker is another one. There's Wembanyama, quite frankly. So I think if you are going to amend it, you have to amend it for all of these guys, and now it opens it up for all of them. Do you agree with amending it this year and that aspect of amending it?
Yeah, you can't just arbitrarily say, well, we're just going to change it for Cade and that's it. Because then it's like, okay, well, what qualifies as, a situation where it should be amended for a particular player? So either the rule exists or it doesn't. And if you ask me, just my personal opinion, the rule just shouldn't exist. So when you say amend, in my mind, it's abolished. Either this
Abolish.
rule,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, either the rule exists because it's better for it to exist and Cade just doesn't get into work this year, or the Cade Cunningham situation proves that it's a bad rule that should not exist. I think it's either one or the other, and in my opinion, it's the other.
Okay, I want to go to, let's stay here and then we'll go to break. That'll be a good cutoff to talk about Daniss Jenkins. YouTube user just said it as well. FlyMonk321, always appreciate you being here. Just let the voters vote. The artificial limitations are just that, artificial. I do want to make one point, O2. I am cool with this, okay? I want to be very clear. I am cool with this, and I agree with this. What I don't want to happen, though, is people getting mad whenever people vote for players who don't have nearly as many games played or minutes played as what they think they should. And I am not trying to call out Bobby Marks whatsoever. Like, that would be stupid of me. But I remember this when he tweeted it, and it was back, it must have been in December. Bobby Marks said, based on what Jokic has done in the first 31 games, he would get my all-NBA vote if there was no rule in place. I just want to prepare fans for that. And again, this isn't a Bobby Marks thing. I'm just telling people, I think people will vote for guys that only play 30 or 40 games or 50 games or whatever. I'm cool with having all of those conversations. I don't trust the voters anyway. With due respect to you, I know you get a vote every 3 or 4 years. I don't trust it in general. And it's really hard. I hate doing it's my least favorite episode to do on game theory. But I do just want to I don't know why I'm trying to be the gatekeeper. That's stupid. It makes no sense for me to do this, but it is going to happen. There are going to be votes that really make people mad because somebody only played 40 games and they're second team all NBA over a guy who played 75.
Yeah, but that's why you also have a wide pool of voters, and I think people and the votes do become public. So there's some element of public accountability that comes after it's all counted and done for. But you have a wide pool of voters because there's going to be outlier votes. I think you have a pool of anything. You're always going to see some things that appear out of whack to how you would have judged it. But I also just feel like that's just a natural part of the process. That's why it's not a panel of 5 people. It's 50 or 100 or however many people.
It's 100, right? It's 100, I think.
I think it's 100. But yeah, you just cast as wide a net as possible, understanding that some of the selections are going to be wacky, but that's why you cast a wide net and not a narrow net. I think it in the end it works itself out. And if that many people thought that those 30 games counted that much, then maybe there was something to it, right? But it's an inherently imperfect process. But I think 9 times out of 10 it generally works out the way it's supposed to. I also just feel like in general there's not enough all NBA teams for just the amount of talent in the league right now. I think most years you could realistically have 4 all NBA teams and you would still probably have some snubs, but I just think with 15 spots total for the number of stars in today's league, there's just inherently going to be snubs as well. And that's also just something that people unfortunately have to accept.
Yeah. And you guys make a great point about the outlier votes. I guess my point with bringing Bobby Marks up is Bobby Marks is very respected. And so if someone like Bobby Marks would be willing to vote Jokic all NBA with 31 games played, it's going to, for what it's worth, I'm all about it. Let's make it part of the conversation. I think it makes it a more nuanced and fair conversation. Did the 60 games that Cade played, was that more or less valuable than the how many ever games, who would be there? The 70 games that Jaylen Brown played, right? That would be the conversation. So it's cool. I think it's worth bringing up that it's going to become it will be one of the most talked about things when we're talking about awards. My biggest thing for awards is make 3 teams for all defense. I hate doing all defense and only getting to do 2 teams. It's so hard. I feel so bad leaving guys off that I end up having to leave off all defense. It looks like Asar is hopefully going to get his games played so he can be first team all defense that he absolutely deserves. Okay, let's go to break because Daniss Jenkins deserves some of our attention after how he played on Monday night against the Lakers and has a big role moving forward. We'll talk about him right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 2. We're going to talk about Daniss Jenkins. I feel like just 2 weeks ago, he was in the slump and we were just saying, guys go through slumps, right? It's not worth hitting the panic button over. And then last night, no Cade, no Isaiah Stewart, no Marcus Sasser. Lakers have LeBron, Lakers have Luka, Austin Reeves. But Daniss, was the best player on the floor, especially in the fourth. He is the game winner with about 25 seconds left. He scores their last 6 points, career high 30 points, 8 assists, 1 turnover. They quite simply don't win that game without Daniss Jenkins. Bryce, where does this one rank for you just in the Daniss lore? He's had like 5 or 6 of these this season where it's just like there's just no way they don't win that game. I'm sorry, there's no way that they win that game if they don't have him doing what he does late in games. I mean, he's so clutch.
What was the game tying? He hit the game tying 3, right? To send to overtime. There's probably
was that against the Wizards? Was that first?
That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. The Wizards. He hit it from the corner.
Yeah.
There's probably bigger individual moments. I think this is one of the most impressive performances from him this season. And I think it should be fair or brought up. He did go through a rough stretch, Omari. Like, it wasn't people, I think giving up on him was extreme, but for 15
and that's more so what I'm referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we would bring it up and then we kept saying, no, you got to keep leaning into him. So he took 1 game off against Toronto, and then he's had 4 pretty good games. The 15 before that game off against Toronto, 0-2, he averaged 5.9 points on 32-20, got to the free throw line less than 2 times a game, 2.5 assists. Now, he wasn't playing a ton of minutes. You know, these last 3 games, obviously with Cade out, he has played a lot, but he was awesome. Here's what I loved about Danniss's game last night also is we saw some on ball, but we also saw some off ball. What excites me about Daniss Jenkins is an ability to not only be Cade's backup, which is very important, right? Even when Cade is healthy, but to also play minutes alongside Cade Cunningham. And I thought we saw him knock down off the ball threes in that game. We saw him make relocations off the ball where I can envision him coming in for Duncan Robinson, 7-8 minutes into the first quarter, playing a few minutes with Cade Cunningham. And then when Cade takes his rest, then Daniss takes over as the primary creator. That's what I like the most about last night's game. And there's been other times we've seen that as well, but that's what excites me the most about Daniss Jenkins for this team.
Yeah, he was 4 or 5 from 3, I believe. And at least 3 of those were just catch and shoots from the quarters, I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's exactly what they need from him. I feel like Daniss could be like a 37, 38, like pretty reliable 3-point shooter that could knock it out of a couple of games playing alongside Cade. I think this season you see rookies, and he is essentially still like a rookie, even though I know he was in the G League for a little bit as well. You just kind of see those ebbs and flows over the course of the season, but that's not the first time we've seen him do some of the relocation, some of the off-ball stuff. I think that part of his game has maybe been a bit more inconsistent than the on-ball stuff, and he's a guy that I think is very rhythm-based. Like, once he's on the rhythm with the ball, you see some of the off-ball stuff, start to emerge a little bit more. But he's absolutely got that as a part of his game, and this team needs that. They need somebody who can just come in and be a credible threat, outside of Duncan, outside of Javante, who's been really good for the quarters this season. And I'll still put Herter in there, even though they haven't quite fallen for him. But like, that's a great part of his game, and especially into something that the Pistons would need.
Trivia time. What does Daniss Jenkins shoot from the corners this season, Omari?
It's a good question. When I was saying that, I was going to pull up Cleaning the Glass and check really quickly.
Don't do it. Just answer the question.
My hands are here. I'm going to guess 39%.
42% behind
42%,
only.
okay.
I think everybody knows who's best from the corner, right? It's Wu. Wu is over 50% from the corners at 53. Isaiah Stewart actually also at 42%, and then Jenkins. So those 3 guys on this team, and sneaky enough, Karis LeVert, 39% from the corners. More trivia for you, O2. What is Daniss Jenkins on overall catch and shoot threes this year? Just catch and shoot threes.
Catch and shoot, period. I'm going to guess that dips a little bit, but I still think he's probably around 38 or 39.
46%.
Oh, wow. 46.
So it's funny enough, he's awful on his dribble 3-pointers. He is 16 of 62 on his
Okay.
dribble threes. Guess what he is on unguarded catch and shoot threes? So that was overall catch and shoot, 46%. Guess what he is on? He's taken 50 unguarded catch and shoot threes this year. Guess what his percentage is?
50%.
52%.
Wow.
That's what this team needs.
So that's
right?
so that's a shot. So his percentages more so reflect his shot profile than like his raw
correct
ability.
Yeah, I mean,
because those are higher than I thought.
He's 38% from three on the year. This is synergy. Sometimes their numbers are a little bit different than if you like go to Basketball Reference. I don't know why that is. No, it's the same, 38%. And so that's on 152 attempts. But again, he's 16 of 62 on dribble threes, which quite frankly, I don't need Daniss Jenkins taking dribble threes. I need him to make the mid-range jumper off the dribble where he's 37%. I think that's when his game really opens up. I wouldn't hate his runner floater to be better than what it is right now. But if he can knock down those off the ball catch and shoot threes from the corner, those are the minutes, right? Like maybe we've been searching for a guy that's on the roster, not because we're not playing Daniss Jenkins. And whenever I'm talking about me and you putting rosters together, stuff like that, maybe it's just we envision him as this primary creator, but maybe he does both, right? Maybe he can do both things for this team and really alleviate some pressure all around. It doesn't put as much pressure on Kevin Huerter to knock down shots. Doesn't put as much pressure on Karis LeVert to handle the ball. I don't know. Like I've thought he's been a huge X factor for the team. I thought they put their eggs in his basket when they had the trade deadline that they did. And these last 4 games, he's really showed up, especially in that one. I do have to bring this up. Well, first, Matthew says Daniss is Danandino Portuguese. That would be awesome. I'm sure I did not do well on that one. But Robotic Russ said, "O2, I love that you pointed out the tweet omitting Danniss's good performances over on Twitter." That was a little disingenuous from that person, I feel like.
It was extremely disingenuous. So there was a tweet from the Lake Show account on Twitter, one of the bigger Lakers fan accounts. A lot of these accounts, especially with the way Twitter's set up now, or X, I guess not Twitter anymore. The verified accounts.
We can call it Twitter. I don't care.
Well, yeah, Twitter, X, whatever. Twitter was more pure than X. X is a different thing. But they essentially engagement farm, and you can make money from engagement, and it leads a lot of these accounts to dabble in misinformation. And basically the tweet was just like dog, and it just showed his last 4 games leading up to him killing the Lakers last night.
The tweet was trying to be like, oh, these type of players always do this to the Lakers.
Yeah.
Daniss Jenkins sucked, and then all of a sudden randomly drops 20. Why does this happen to the poor Lakers? Was essentially the tone of the tweet, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you look at his last 4 games, it's like 9 points, 5 assists, 4.7 assists, 6 points, 3 assists. And it's like, no, they edited out 2 of his recent games. He just had 20 and 7 or something like that against the Warriors Friday. And then they edited out the game he had against the Wizards, where he had, I think, 15 and 7 against the Wizards. So it was like 3 of his last 4 games. 2 of them were edited out. And it's like, well, if you edit out the good performances and only highlight the bad ones, then yeah, it does appear that way. But if you look at his recent games, and it's like, okay, he had 15 and 7, 9 and 5, 22 and 8, and then 30 and 8. Suddenly the 30 and 8 is not an outlier performance. So it was just an edited tweet to disingenuously imply that Daniss never does this. He just had a one-off game against the Lakers. And it's like, no, he's been doing this all season. And you edited this tweet and it went viral. I'm about to check. It got like 13,000 likes, like 800 retweets. It's like, it's not a real tweet. Like, that's misinformation. So I had to point it out and be like, no, like you edited 2 games out of that. Like, that's not what happened.
I love it. FlyMonk321 says something that I wanted to put in my game notes, but I felt bad doing it. Also, if he stopped missing dunks and just laid the ball in, he would be better. It's like once a game, Omari, and I know he's going to end up on a highlight reel when he catches a body. He's 12 of 18 on dunks this year. This man is 67% on dunks, not at the rim, not on dunks. Daniss, just put it high off the glass, my guy. You guys need those 2 points right now. Poster somebody next year. No, Daniss has been incredible. I will say this. I like his on-ball defense. His off-the-ball defense is starting to remind me a little bit of what we saw from Dennis Schroeder last year. Would love for him to lock that in just a little bit. we had a few other Daniss things here. I just want to get through those. So Blog Piston says, hi guys, this team is amazing. It's really great to see a guy like Jenkins is playing his best basketball. I don't understand the second part of this, O2. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah. Thank you, Jamil McMillan. That's his. Okay, so Jamil McMillan is the, for those who don't know, is the Motor City Cruise head coach.
Okay.
His dad has an amazing history with Bernie Bickerstaff. So Jamil McMillan is the son of Nate McMillan, who had a relationship
okay.
with Bernie Bickerstaff. I think was a former Bernie assistant, and then obviously has known JB for a long time. So there's just a bit of history there with the staff. Yeah.
Got you. And then we had this one from Garcia. What up, Doe, from Madrid. When I think about having Daniss and B-Ball Paul signed for next season on the cheap, it's tough not to look forward to next year. Feels like we're playing with house money. Not yet. Let's get a first round win at least. But it is awesome to have those guys on those contracts as depth players, and for Daniss maybe more. Let's do. Yeah, there's two more here. Kind of talking about his ceiling. We can piggyback these together. So Jack says, do you guys have any thoughts on Daniss eventually full-time starting as the point guard and Cade playing more off ball? And Thomas says, what's the next level for Daniss? Can he just start stacking game after game? My thing, I think he can play with Cade Cunningham, O2. I don't want Cade to go too much off the ball. I love off-ball actions for Cade Cunningham. I love go post up a smaller defender for Cade Cunningham. But I think what we just talked about is what I'm not saying putting in the starting lineup right now, but sure, maybe there's a ceiling there. I think I've compared it to like the Andrew Nimhard role, right? In Indiana. Like, can he, to me, that would be the ceiling, is that type of role. I don't know that I would bet on it. And I don't want to overreact to the performance we just saw after we did see a 15-game slump. But I do think he can help make life a little bit easier for Cade on the court with him, and then even when Cade's off the court.
Yeah, just from a rotation standpoint, I don't necessarily need Daniss in the starting lineup. I think having him come off the bench and just being able to run a second unit is extremely valuable. You probably still need a little bit more point guard depth there next season, and not just have two guys, but you can play Daniss with and without Cade, regardless of if Daniss starts. I think a strength for the Pistons this season has been that they do have a bigger starting five, where like your smallest guys are both 6'6", and they're Cade and Asar, who are two of the better defenders. Well, your best defender and then one of the better defenders in that group. So I think starting Daniss, you lose some of that, but you could bring Daniss in, toward the end of the first, have them overlap a bit, sit Cade, have Daniss run things at the beginning of the second. Maybe they come back in to close the first half. Like, there's a lot of stuff you could do to get them on the court at the same time. And with that, like, I thought, like, a nice trend this season was that the coaching staff clearly last summer evaluated players' strengths and weaknesses and then had a better idea of how to apply them this season. Like, we see, Duran with more offensive freedom. Isaiah Stewart has the 3-ball back. And I expect to do some of that with Daniss next season. It's like, okay, he's an NBA player under contract. We could just break down what he did this season. And wouldn't surprise me if, like, we do see Daniss doing a bit more of the off-ball stuff with Cade next season. So that's TBD, but I think Daniss as the backup point guard is just so good for this team. I don't think you necessarily need him to start to maximize his value and role, or to get him playing with Cade.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, with YouTube user here. Daniss probably a rotation player, not a regular starter. Before we go to break and then change topics a little bit, Thomas brings up Asar's missing every tap layup. Seriously, how much better would it be if he just made the bunny shots? More trivia. According to Synergy, what is Asar Thompson on tip-in attempts this season?
That's tough. I don't even know how to quantify. Like,
okay, so here's what I'll tell you. He has 27 tip-in attempts this year.
Okay.
How many do you think he's made of 27? According to Synergy.
Are second efforts included in that total 27?
I would assume, like, it's just any straight up. We're gonna do the overall offensive rebound in a second. So I think this is truly just the actual, like, he goes up and tries to immediately tip in an offensive rebound for a bucket. He's tried 27 times.
I mean, I would assume more than half, like what, 18 or 19 maybe?
9. He is 9 of
9, really?
27 of
Oh,
I
wow,
mean,
okay,
to Thomas's point here,
okay.
it's crazy. I think the point here is there is like low-hanging fruit for Asar.
Yeah,
According to Synergy, on offensive rebounds / putbacks, he's 25 of 57 overall, 44% on those play types. Just kind of crazy. Listen, Asar is awesome. He's awesome defensively, but I think Thomas makes a fair point that there is some low hanging fruit that if he gets it figured out a little bit, um, that it can be even better offensively, even before like the jumper and the ball handling and all of those different things. So let's go to break.
maybe he
When
floats
we
too much when he jumps. Maybe he just throws off the timing. He doesn't go straight up. I feel like, yeah, so like sort of readjust when he's up there. I'm sure he could figure that out, but I'm surprised it's only 9.
maybe we will maybe he'll go on a stretch here where he doesn't miss any for a couple months. But let's
Yeah.
go to break. When we come back, let's talk about where the Pistons are at in the standings right now, in this race for the number 1 seed over the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks.
All right, we are back with segment 3. I'm taking a look at the standings. The Pistons, who have 11 games left, are 5 games over the Boston Celtics. They are 5.5 games over the New York Knicks, and then they are a full 8 games over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Um, I know that people have been watching the standings. I'm sure those fan bases have been paying closer attention since Cade got hurt. Maybe sensing a window. With a 5-game lead and 11 games left, uh, I feel like the Pistons probably have this in the bag. I don't know, but these teams are going to start resting guys. Pistons will too. They've got some, they've got some games they should be able to get. It just seems like that's a very narrow window, for Boston to be able to catch them. It would take the Pistons dropping most of their games down the stretch and Boston probably winning all of them at this point.
Yeah, Baisley 2000 says, remember when everyone thought we would blow the 1 seed? I don't know that I thought they would, but I will hand up. I was nervous about it. And the big part, I felt much better after they finished off the back-to-back against the Wizards and the Warriors. My worry was like, okay, what if you drop one of those games? What if you do lose to the Warriors? And then you have this stretch of Lakers, Hawks, and Pelicans back-to-back. I know the Pelicans aren't good, but the Pelicans are trying to win right now. O2. They are putting their best players on the court. They've actually taken both rookies out of the starting lineup to try and win games. Then at Minnesota, at OKC, that's a back-to-back with Toronto. Then you get Minnesota again, and then you do hit a stretch of at Philly, at Orlando, Milwaukee, who shouldn't be trying to win, at Charlotte, who knows, and at Indiana. I was just a little bit nervous that they could go on a 5 or 6 game skid, starting with that Warriors game through these next few. Listen, they took care of 2 of those games already. They already, again, knocked off the Warriors. That win over the Lakers I thought was huge. And to your point, they're 5 games up on the Celtics with the tiebreaker with 11 games to play. I think both teams have 11 games to play. It would take a catastrophic 11 games for them to really lose this thing. So I do feel pretty good about them holding on to the 1 seed now. I will, again, hand up. I was a little bit nervous about it whenever the Cade news first came out. That can lead us into the next question here is, who shall we be, from Thomas, who should we be rooting for in the play-in if we are number 1? He says not Charlotte. So right now, looking at the standings, Atlanta has actually jumped into the 6. Philly 7, Orlando 8, Miami 9, Charlotte 10. Any of those teams stand out in terms of teams that are good matchup or anything like that? Maybe I know we've talked about this a little bit, but any thoughts on a first round matchup from those teams?
Yeah, first I want to point out that the tail end of the East is substantially better than the tail end of the West this year. Like all 10 teams in the postseason in the East are going to have a winning record, and like not even just by a few. Like the worst team may have like 43 or 44 wins, which is crazy. And I say that to say, I don't think it really matters. I think all those games kind of have their own risks associated with them. I mean, you've got Philly, like if you have Embiid and Maxey healthy, that's a pretty tough series, even though they're not the most deep team otherwise. Orlando, I mean, Orlando's a good team. The Pistons have gotten the better of them, I believe, this season, but over the course of a 7-game series, like that's going to be a really physical, tough series. Miami, that's a good team. You've got Bam, you've got Tyler Hero. Spoelstra obviously is one of the best coaches in the league. And then Charlotte, they can knock down threes at an extremely high rate. All these series could be pretty dangerous. I don't know if there's one that strikes me as inherently worse than the other. Maybe Charlotte, just because they've just been so hot. Maybe they've been on a slightly different tier than some of the other teams as of late. Miami, what? Wow, I actually see here that Miami and
they
Orlando
lost 5 in a row. Them and Orlando have both lost 5 in a row. Yeah.
Okay. I actually didn't realize that. So Miami's
but here's the
probably
thing,
was against the Pistons.
They had obviously won at least 5 in a row before that, though, because both of those teams are 5-5 over their last 10 while having lost 5 in a row. So at the very least, those teams were on 5-game winning streaks ahead of those losing streaks. So they were hot not too long ago.
Yeah, none of those teams strike me as like inherently much better of a matchup for the Pistons. Like all those teams can knock down threes. They've all got a couple guys who could just go get you a bucket. The Magic are probably the best defensively in that group, but regardless, the Pistons are going to have their work cut out for them, I think, in the first round. They should. I also think the Pistons are better than all 4 of those teams. So none of those teams strike me as a like this one is that much more dangerous. I think the Pistons should be able to beat any of them, but they all have dangers in their own ways that they have to be aware of. So that sounds like a cop-out, but I really don't have a strong opinion of which team is that much better for them.
At one point we talked about the Hawks maybe being a decent matchup. They have won 9 of 10. Obviously a good team, and they've jumped into the 6. I think Toronto would be interesting just because I don't know what their offense is going to look like in the playoffs. And I don't know that they have a great matchup. Like, I know Scotty Barnes is incredible defensively. He's incredible, but I think he's better as an off-the-ball defender than on the ball in general. I think potentially the best matchup or easiest matchup is Philly if they're not healthy, but they're probably not getting the 8 seed if they're not healthy. Like that would somehow they'd have to stay as the 7 or 8, lose the first round, and then somehow win the second play-in game over a Miami or a Charlotte. I think I'm kind of with you where especially if Philly's healthy, they're at least interesting. I can talk myself into Orlando with Banchero and Bane and Suggs, Miami with Bam and just like the belief in Spoelstra and what they do there. And as you mentioned, I don't know how much I believe in Charlotte in the playoffs, but that team is really, really good. They haven't been there, but I think they're going to, order the blazing horse. Atlanta's win streak came against some interesting competition. That's fair. So here's what I will say. Fly Monk, and he said, we can win the first round without Cade. He should take as long as he needs. And then he said, again, I think we can beat any of the play-in teams in the 7-game series without Cade. Should be prohibitive favorites with Cade. I think you have a little bit more confidence in me in this team without Cade Cunningham in a playoff setting. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I think I would be a little bit more nervous if it came out that Cade was not playing in the first round against any of these matchups. That is for me. I would be nervous. If Cade's there, he's healthy. Let's say he's 90%. I do think that they win the first round. I felt very good about them winning a first round series. If Cade is not there, I don't personally have quite as much confidence. I think they could win it, but I don't know that I would be like 100% sold that they were going to 0-2.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm 100% sold that they would win without Cade. Like, you look at Charlotte, like they could just rain down threes on you. I don't think you're going to keep the lid capped on that for all 7 games in the series. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this team's played pretty well without Cade these last few games, but so many playoff series just comes down to who can get you a bucket late in the game. And if the Pistons don't have Cade, they are going to be at a disadvantage in that category, possibly against all 4 teams. A healthy Philly having Maxey and Embiid is tough. Charlotte with LaMelo and Brennan Miller and Concanupo, that's going to be tough. Miami with Tyler Hero and Bam and Norm Powell, that's going to be tough. Like, no matter which direction you go, those guys are going to have players who can go get you a bucket. Franz, Bain, Banchero, that's going to be tough. So I don't know how you quantify, which team is tougher in that area, but all those guys probably have more guys than the Pistons in that area. If Cade misses time, because then you're relying on Duran and Daniss to get it done, and I think they can. But those other guys have some real shooters and some real scorers who have done it in those moments.
Yeah, I think for me, I still believe, like Richard brings up the coaching and stuff like that, and the 76ers health, all of those different things. My worry would just be, like, I'm already curious what Jalen Duren is going to look like as the number 2 option in the playoffs if they go on a run, right? And so now as the number 1 option, what does that look like? I think who I think's been underrated over these few games is Tobias Harris. I think Tobias Harris has been really good and has taken on a little bit more of a playmaking role. I don't know what his actual assists have been over these 3 or 4 games, but I think he's done a really nice job. But you're asking him to take a massive load in the playoffs. Daniss having to start games in the playoffs is a huge ask. So so he's had 6, 5, 5. Yeah, he's averaging about 5 assists over this stretch. So I don't know. Fly Monk says, can 65% to win the series in my mind? That's probably fair. Like, I think I would still pick Detroit. I thought maybe you were like still 100%. And so that was my only thing. Fly Monk was like, I don't think I would have been at 100. K99, KMO1. Any ideas on Isaiah Stewart? Any updates there with Stewart?
I expect we'll have an update at some point this week. I think he's already missed 5 or 6 games, right? So yeah, his reevaluation point should be coming up here soon.
Okay. Fly Monk says Cam Carr at 20-something. I snuck in the NBA draft into my tweet, Omari, just for you. So at 20-something, only profile I like in our draft range 2 of the future. Yeah, I mean, Cam Carr is really, really good. He's a junior this year at Baylor. He started his career at Tennessee, and he can really, really shoot it. I did a breakdown on him over at Game Theory here a couple weeks ago after their season ended because they did not make the NCAA tournament. But this is a guy that's 51% from the field, 39% from 3. He's really athletic. His dad actually played in the NBA, but he has length. He has real NBA level athleticism. He is slight of frame, which is a little bit concerning, but Cam Carr, he's definitely in that range for me that it looks like Detroit will be picking in. That's another thing, right? To standings watch is where Minnesota ends up. I mean, it's kind of fun in regards to that, where, I don't cheer for them, but, or cheer against them, but, whenever they do lose, it opens up some of the, that pick swap. So right now, Detroit would pick 28th, but with the swap with Minnesota, they could jump up to 22, which puts you in the range of somebody like Cam Carr. Blog Piston says Christian Anderson. I'm not as big a Christian Anderson fit for Detroit, but I know some people are, including Sam. YouTube user says Yaxel Lindeborg. That's a Michigan guy. I don't think Yax is going to be there where Detroit picks, in my opinion. I think Yaxel Lindeborg is going to go earlier. For me, I probably wouldn't have him fall into 22. But if he does fall, he would be a great replacement there to get in at the 4 position. We actually had Rashik said, does B-Ball Paul average over 15 minutes in the playoffs? I think that's a fun question. What do you think, O2? I mean, if Stu's healthy, I'm probably saying no. But man, that guy has played so well when his number's been called that it feels, I wouldn't hate it for him.
Yeah. You can't rule it out, right? He's a guy that's really performed at a high level. When he's been given an opportunity, I could see a playoff series coming to a point where one of Duran or Stu are in foul trouble, and you just end up leaning on B-ball Paul to get you some shot making and chaos. I don't know if he averages over 15 minutes, but I think we'll see him. I think depending on how certain games shake out, he absolutely could play more than 15 minutes. I just don't know if he averages that, and if they make room for 3 bigs in their playoff rotation.
It seems more like a scenario where he has a couple games where he plays 15, but doesn't necessarily average, right? Because then he gets some DNP, coaches' decisions.
Right.
Lily Jones says the like button. Yes, please. Please hit the like button. Thank you guys for the support. Blog Pistons Carr is best option, but see him top 10. Anderson or Bennett Sturts is more realistic. So for me, Cam Carr is realistic. I have Cam Carr in my, 20-ish tier, like in the 20 range. I have Christian Anderson in that same range. I actually have Bennett Sturts in the top 20. So this is just my board. You might be right overall. That's just where I'm at. And then Order of the Blazing Horse asked about Joshua Jefferson, who plays for Iowa State, had the ankle injury, or Alan Graves, which is a freshman that actually came off the bench for Santa Clara, but has really, has a lot of fans in the NBA draft space. Those guys are kind of the end of my first round tier. Here's what I will say. This draft in that range is really going to change over the next month, guys and girls, men and women. The amount of NIL money that are available to some of the, like even a Cam Carr, the amount of NIL money that's going to be available to people with eligibility could drastically change the Pistons range and who's available. Like in my opinion, Alan Graves is probably staying in school and going to make a bunch of NIL money next year. And that could be true about Christian Anderson as well. There's a lot of those guys. Matthews asks, if Langen could draft A-Cup with some kind of trade, would you?
I can't imagine the trade that would get him that high.
I think you have to get to 5. You have to get to 5 at least. And I think some people would say you'd have to get higher. I think you have to get to 5 if you want Darius A-Cup, and that's before we see him in the Sweet 16 and possibly further into the NCAA tournament. It would be interesting because dude is a bucket and can really, really shoot. And theoretically, the Pistons lineup would be able to manage his lack of size. I will say this. He will be a worse defender entering the NBA than Duncan Robinson. Like that's what I will say. So you would really have to make up for that. But Merez Johnson Jr. is another great name of a guy that I think is a first-round pick right now, but could get enough money to stay in school. There's just the end of the first round is loaded with these type of names of guys that have eligibility, and it'll be interesting to see where we may end up talking names like Alex Caravan as the best option, or Richie Saunders coming off an ACL. I don't know. Is NIL money worth delaying your second NBA contract?
I think a lot of guys who aren't looking at a max deal.
Here's what it is. It's guys that aren't. I think if they get a first round guarantee, they're probably staying in. I think for them to go back and get way more than they would get on a 2-way, then it's just, if they get $4 million going back to school, $3 or $4 million, as opposed to what a 2-way NBA contract is, it's probably worth it. So, anyway, I'm excited to talk NBA draft when the time comes, but it is a little bit tough with where the Pistons are at right now, because I think that area of the draft is going to change so much. I will say, let's finish real quick here. March Madness stuff. I mean, I know we don't have any quote unquote Cinderella stories. It's all Power 4 programs. I think that's part of, NIL as well. And one player staying, but any thoughts? I know Michigan State and Michigan are both in it. It's been a fun tournament so far. Some game-winning shots, some close to game-winning shots. Any thoughts on March Madness before we get out of here?
Yeah, some great games. I've been extremely impressed by Michigan State. Great. Love to see Trey Fort step up and knock down 3 or 4 threes from the other night. Like, they really needed somebody to do that. Shout out to Jeremy Fears. Shout out to Cohen Carr. Bryce, how do you like Cohen Carr as a prospect? Like, is he a second round guy for you? Where, like, how do you evaluate him?
I'm excited to watch him Friday against Connecticut and evaluate him a little bit more. I haven't really locked in on Michigan State in that way because I just didn't think they had any draft prospects this year. And I still don't think Cohen probably comes out with another year of eligibility, but I feel like he's worth watching and trying to figure it out a little bit. But I would still guess that he goes back to school for another year and figures it out. But that's a monster matchup, Michigan State and Connecticut. Duke and St. John's, like those games back-to-back on Friday are ridiculous. But if you want to get tuned into the NBA draft, you can do it with all of these teams playing. Houston has Chris Sanak, who is theoretically in the Pistons range. We mentioned Bennett Sturts in Iowa. Bryce Sanford for Nebraska is a second-round wing that could theoretically rise. Obviously, people know the Michigan names, but for Alabama, you have Phylon and Amari Allen. So you have names across the board here. Texas, if you want to watch Texas Purdue, Dalen Swain is a name that you might want to keep an eye on. So yeah, I'm sure Fears gets a look as well, right? He's a senior, right? So yeah, he'll be auto, right? Fears is a senior. I'm not wrong there. No, he's not.
No, Fears is he's got a couple years.
Yeah, he's still got another year. My bad.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Those guys are going back, in my opinion. So, all right, we got some big Pistons games coming up this week. See if Daniss Jenkins can keep it going. We'll be back sometime next week. I don't know if they play on Sunday or Monday. If they play on Sunday, we'll be back on Monday. If they play on Monday, we'll be back on Tuesday. Make sure you go read everything Omari's doing at the Free Press. Go subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack. The Pin Down on Detroit Bad Boys, Locked On Pistons, Order of the Blazing Horse, all of the Pistons content out there. This is a great time of year for that as we move into the end of the regular season and playoffs. O2, take it away, my guy.
Yes, big thanks as always to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and a big shout out to Wes Davenport as always, and we'll talk to you all next week.